first interview on Property Tribes TV of 2024, and I'm delighted to welcome a fellow landlord. And this is an interview I've been looking forward to for quite some time, because I first met up with Mahara Haque of My Landlord Cares on social media late last year, and she impressed me so much. And here she is. So Mahara, welcome to Property Tribes TV. And I think a great place to start would be, how did you become a landlord? What does your landlord journey look like?
So thank you for having me, Vanessa. My landlord journey started a number of years ago after the stock market crash. So the crash of 2008, where the housing market completely collapsed. And on the news, there was lots of information around pensions collapsing. And at that time, I was in a full-time job with 3 young children. And I just thought, at this rate, I'll be working forever. So how can I use my money for better? And how can I create my own pension pot? So for me, property was always a method of being financially independent. So it was always a side hustle thing for me when I first started. It was always like, I'll have it on the side. And then one day I'll just live off or have that subsidizing my income. So I continued working and I continued doing what I did. And then the COVID pandemic hit. And I've been sitting on an idea of setting up My Landlord Cares as a letting agency. Mm-hmm. So I have a background in social housing. So I've worked within local authorities. I currently sit within social housing boards as well. So I saw a massive gap between what's on offer in the private rented sector and what the social housing provides. Mm-hmm. So I've been sitting on this idea, you know what life's like, it's full throttle, you never have any time. Then all of a sudden, COVID happened. I had loads of time to myself and loads of time to reflect on what I wanted to do in my life. So in July 2020, I set up My Landlord Cares, thinking, it's a bucket list thing to do. At this point, it was just death everywhere and, it was just awful. So I thought, I'm going to do it. And Lord behold, I'm still here, so that's a surprise to myself, first and foremost.
Well, that's a wonderful story. And have you done basic, family standard buy-to-lets? Have you gone into social housing? What kind of structure to your portfolio do you have?
So my portfolio consists of family buy-to-lets. Mm-hmm. So for me, property is a means of giving back. I started off, by investing in my own local area. So I started seeing how one tenant can change the makeup of my street. And I saw landlords buying properties, landlords who were further afield, and actually causing more damage than any good in the local area, because you could never get hold of them if there was antisocial behavior, if there's fly tipping. So for me, it was actually a regeneration model. I wanted my property to do good, and people in my neighborhood would keep me accountable because they knew who I was, who the owner of the property was. So if there's anything untowards, they'd let us know, and we'd always meet up with the neighbours of the properties and say, if there's anything going on, please let us know as well as having good relationships with the tenants. So we continue to advocate that model, because that model for me, a rental property is a home for somebody. Mm-hmm. But actually through our letting agencies, we have flats, we manage HMOs, we manage 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom traditional buy-to-lets. So we've got quite a diverse model within our letting agency portfolio.
Am I right in thinking that you're in business with your husband?
Yes, I am. So we're both co-directors and co-founders of the business.
Because I just wanted to go back to that point about being a female and having financial independence, because I agree with you. It's so important. I'm married and have been for 20 years, but both my husband Nick and I decided that we should have our own independent financial resources and assets, and I just think it's so important for women in any situation to have financial independence, because we don't know what life is going to, what curveballs life is going to throw at us, do we?
COVID showed that, a lot of people lost jobs. People were doing that whole moving across and trying to do different things. I heard somewhere that a record-breaking number of businesses were started up in COVID. Now, how many of them are still continuing, time will tell. But I do completely believe that it's so important for women to go onto this path of financial independence.
Now, let's talk a little bit about, some of the learnings that you've had along the way, because I'm sure if it's anything like my property journey, it hasn't been plain sailing. but through the challenges we face, we learn and we grow. What would you say have been your major learnings throughout your landlord life?
Definitely. I think there's two critical junctures that I can point to. There's been loads of little bumps, but these ones have been the major biggies. And one was when we had a possession order in the midst of the pandemic, and we had to gain possession of a property because the tenant was destroying the property. We went through the courts, we went through that whole process. And I just thought, I've learned so much behind a litigator as well as part of the process. I've learned so much. I've got to be able to use this information that I have to do better and to help others who are going through similar journeys. Because regardless of how supportive you are and how caring you are, there are tenants that just decide to disengage. And that's something that will happen. So you have to find a way of knowing what the system is and being able to play within that system. And there's also something else that sticks out is in my first year of my property journey, especially when I set up my landlord cares, I made all the rookie mistakes that you could possibly make. So I invested in properties that I shouldn't have invested in. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I believed anybody that came and told me that do this and you'll get clients, and do that and you'll get clients. So I was that person, naive, green around the ears, who believed everything and hemorrhaged money.
Well, the biggest challenges we face, they are the greatest opportunities for growth and learning. And when we're outside our comfort zone, that's again where the most growth happens. So I just so commend you for not only being a landlord, but actually starting a lettings agency as well, doing it with your 3 young children in the background. I just think it's amazing. And what also really impressed me, Mahara, was your TEDx talk, which well, I'm going to put it underneath this video so people can view it, because I'd like more people to see it. And what came across was your passion for landlordism, for responsible and ethical landlordism, and what a big difference that it could make to communities. And I think that's such a wonderful message. But not only that, it goes very much against a lot of the anti-landlord rhetoric that we see in the mainstream media, which I know you're aware of. And tell us a little bit about how the TEDx talk came about and what it was like for you, because I think it was your very first public speaking engagement.
Yeah, well, as I said, I was working full time, and I actually gave up my job 2 months ago to focus fully on the property business. So I was always employed, and when you're employed, you're almost cocooned in, within a company culture. And I started up my business in the midst of the pandemic, July 2020, and I was almost like in hiding, not telling anybody. And there's this whole guilt thing going on, like it's a dirty secret. And we should be proud, but I was almost ashamed of, I've started it, little old me has started this, and the imposter syndrome kicked in. And there's an opportunity for our local TEDx. And I've always loved TEDx's, and I submitted an application form thinking, I'm never going to get it. I've tried it, I don't like living life with regrets. So imagine my surprise when they called me back and asked me for another piece. And at this time, things were still online. So I thought, okay, on the worst case scenario, I'll be online behind a camera and it won't really be real. So in Feb, when that was being done, I think it was 2021, things had started to normalize and they were back to public engagement and in rooms. So yeah, I've always been petrified of public speaking, and there's a lot of support that goes on beyond TEDx. So you get a speaking support, you get dress rehearsals, and I think with the power of all that, I was able to speak in front of a group of 200 people in the room in a live audience. So it was my worst fear and coming out of my comfort zone in a radical way. But it was the most amazing thing I've ever done, hands down. And would I do it again? No.
Well,
I'm glad I did it, and I ticked that box off.
Well, it just flowed so beautifully, and you were just speaking straight from the heart. I didn't see any notes or any auto cue or anything like that. So, well, just incredible, and congratulations for an awesome TEDx talk. You did touch on it just briefly, but you, how can landlords contribute to communities? Because I think this is a really interesting theme and topic to kind of dig a little bit deeper on. Because, you know, we hear of a lot of landlords that live in London but invest in the north. They're not embedded into the community in the same way that a local landlord might be, but all landlords should be able to be part of their local communities and try and have a positive impact. Have you got any tips how they can do that?
I think I think sometimes as well the model's a bit wrong. So when I go to property investment networks and property groups, someone stands up and goes, "Hi, I'm a millionaire and I made it by doing this, and I got X, and I got X returns on investment and X on profits." And I think
I've got a passive income, and I don't have to do any work at all.
Exactly. And I'm thinking, your money, you know, if I must be deluded, but your money comes from a tenant, it comes from a person. Why doesn't the conversation start off with, so these are the tenants I support? And there's nothing dirty in saying the word profit. Profit is absolutely good, and it's a business. Landlording is a business. But why don't we start that conversation off? You know, say, I've got this tenant, and these are my tenants, and I find this within my social housing sector worlds as well. You know, we've got local authorities, big landlords with thousands and thousands of properties, and sometimes they can't put a face to a property. And we've got investors from abroad, from South Africa, Hong Kong, we've got from down from South, but we try and get in there in that supply chain and say, let's do this. I'll give you the same returns as everybody else, but actually ours is a no-brainer, because if you look after your tenants, they look after your property, you minimize voids and repairs. So it's a no-brainer for landlords, you know. So I try and sell it in that way to landlords and go, there's more. We can, you know, in a world where we're talking about investment and investment being green, why can't we talk about being a landlord and being an ethical landlord and being proud of it? For so long, I hid the fact that I was a landlord, especially in the sectors that I work in, where landlording is a dirty word. We are the enemy. Then I thought, I've worked so hard to gain and accrue my properties. Why should I be ashamed for?
No, exactly. And I think you mentioned earlier about engaging with neighbours. I think that's a really good idea to say, you know, I'm the landlord of the property next door. If you have any issues or you see anything that causes you concern, please do get in touch with me. I think things like, you know, very thorough repairs and maintenance, waste management, not having bins overflowing, you know, making sure tenants park responsibly in the street. I mean, those are a few of the things that I was thinking of.
No, definitely. And what we do is, because of my background of community development, for us, within the first 6 months of any tenancies, when we can get things right, when we can open up lines of communications and build up that trust with tenants. So if they're having issues, so for example, for today, one of our tenants has had problems with cutting keys for a flat. And we've said, actually, we can help you in doing this and sourcing this for you, getting that sorted. If tenants will have kids and they don't know where the local schools are, saying these are where the local schools are. But we find if you build up that relationship in the first 6 months, then you've built a good springboard and a good platform. So, and I think that's where our ethical ethos comes from. That actually we're bringing a bit of community development. That doesn't mean I'm holding hands with anybody. I'm empowering people to make their own decisions. But sometimes everybody needs, you know, when you've moved somewhere new, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of bills to register for. If someone can be there and go, actually, as a letting agency, this is the local neighborhood, this is where you go for your benefits, this is who will actually help you, then it's a head start in the right direction, because I want people to feel at home sooner rather than later.
Do you think, you know, the fact that you are a mum with 3 children, you are part of the community yourself, do you think that that helps in your landlordism? Because when I first posted your TEDx talk, I said female landlord, and I got told off. So I changed it to caring landlord. But I do like to say that I think female landlords have a lot to offer, and I wish there was more of us. And maybe in some ways we are more approachable, and maybe in some ways we have a better understanding of, creating a home and, getting kids settled into a local school and all those kind of issues. Do you have a view on that, Mahara?
I definitely think so. I find there's a lot of, especially post-COVID, there's a lot of separation and a lot of single parents with children, especially in rental properties. The proportion of that has increased quite a lot since COVID, and that's Sheffield Council figures. And I think whatever we can do to help people who have gone through a rough patch, I think being a female landlord, you have you want to make things as comfortable as possible, and you want to help in any situation that you can. And you're right, there is not as many female landlords, but I know they're out there. And it's, my hunt to try and find more like me.
Well, let's hope that we can get some of them joining the discussion on Property Tribes and commenting on this video, because I think that would be just wonderful to see more female landlords putting their head above the parapet, because essentially that is what you've done, Mahara, and that takes courage. But let's just wind this up now. We're in the early stages of 2024, and it's a fresh start, a new year. Do you have any predictions for landlord life in 2024? Are we going to face more challenges? There's still a lot of uncertainty. What are your thoughts on landlordism in 2024?
I come with a more positive outlook than what the mainstream tells us within my own sectors of influence. So I operate in the South Yorkshire area, which covers Sheffield, Rotherham, Barnsley and Doncaster. But very definitely in Sheffield, I've seen a lot more collaboration working. So with partners like the council, social housing associations, charitable groups. So I've seen a lot more collaboration, and I've seen a lot more honesty that actually none of us can crack the housing issue by ourselves. I think it's a bumpy ride for landlords. It's difficult and it's hard, and especially with interest rates going up, it's going to be more challenging. There's a lot of talk about landlords exiting the sector, but there's space for growth, and I think there needs to be more people knowing that property can be a vehicle for good, can be a method of creating more wealth and being more independent. And we need to educate more people on that, especially I believe in educating more females as well, because there's a lot of fear out there, and what if this happens and what if that happens. But actually it's not as hard. The first step is always the most difficult, but if you've got someone helping you and supporting you, it makes it a lot easier.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Property Tribes TV, Mahara. It's just been such a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope we can catch up again later down the property trail, or maybe meet up at one of the events around the country, because I think you're setting such a great example, not just for female landlords, but for all landlords, by being a caring landlord and trying to spread that message online and also within your local community. So I'm very excited to watch your continued journey, because I'm sure you're going to go from strength to strength, and it's a pleasure to have you here on Property Tribes TV.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.